every tiny action or thing you say can put a label on you. Because
it's definitely true.
Yeah, I'm not sure to what extent this is true, but I can imagine, like, I'm sure the doctors speak amongst each other about, like, with students, like, regarding students, like,
okay, this is something that I feel, okay, if there's any 4th years or 5th years,
right,
like, listening to this, like, the medical team, the doctors, we notice everything.
Oh, God.
We'll always know if you're there or not there, like, we're always asking. We might not care.
It's so interesting.
But it's like, and like, I want to say this in like the least offensive way possible, which is always a great way to start a statement.
I love you, but.
Welcome back to Subcut, the podcast where we get under the skin of medical topics and things that might be interesting to medical people. My name is Justin, I used to be a doctor.
My name is Emma, I'm a 3rd year physiotherapy student.
And my name's Neil, I'm a 4th year medical student.
So, new host, Emma.
Hey.
Welcome back. I mean, welcome, full stop.
We haven't recorded an episode before this.
Okay, so the topic that we're talking about today is, well, Neil's just entered into first 4 weeks at hospital, taking the first steps into becoming like a fully fledged clinically practicing doctor. And it's always a big step, going to hospital for the first time. And there's always new insights and new challenges. And I think it's, I remember when I was like 1st year, 4th years were like, whoa, like that's just 5th year, like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. And at TI, like
stethoscope?
Final years are just like, I might as well just set up an altar and pray to them every day. You know, it was just, let alone doctors, they exist in another dimension, completely inaccessible. So I think it's a big milestone, and a lot of students will look forward to it, especially finishing 3rd year where you're just kind of sick of lectures, right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna explore this topic today, and that's gonna be the main focus. So let's start with your first day in the hospital. What was that like? Run us through.
No, I want to talk about your before your first day. Like, how were you feeling the day before? You like, woo!
Sure, yeah. Surprisingly, actually, I don't think I was as excited as I expected to be.
But you're always excited about everything.
So. No, like it was interesting, and I had my bags. Actually, no, I might have been a lot more interested than I initially thought. I had all my bags and everything ready for the first day, and I arrived there super early just in case something were to go wrong. I think a lot of my understanding of what clinicals is going to be like was framed around the stories that people have told me and how to make a good impression on your first day, how to not be the idiot 4th year student and be like the luggage of the team and stuff, and actually like do something, be proactive and contribute to the team. And so I think a lot of my time before that was spent thinking about that stuff, because I just didn't want to be like a vegetable, just like something stupid. I was there the very first day, and I'm started on specialty medicine, which is for those that don't know, how would you describe it? It's just think of like an organ system or something like that, and those people that are in that that are really good at that system are just sort of specialists about that.
Yeah. So examples would be like cardiology, gastroenterology, infectious diseases. Very, very specialized within medicine, as opposed to the other medical specialties, which would be general medicine, which deals with stuff that is not super specialized, or something like GP, which is obviously community and primary care. So And so I started my first 3 weeks on cardiology. Going into this as well, a lot of my friends were sort of, I had a few more 5th year friends and other clinical friends and stuff. They're like, do a bit of reading and stuff, get familiarized with the medical terminology and stuff, and so I did that. Like a good, like happy-go-lucky, like 4th year medical student. I'm feeling prepared. And then first day in, I'm wondering for the very first time, like, are you my consultant? Are you going to be the nurse for this one? Like, I prepared as much as I could for the things that I thought I had to prepare for, but when it actually came down to it, I was still as unprepared as if I did nothing at all.
because a lot of the time, and I think house officers face this as well, once they switch rotations, or if they were to switch DHBs, where's the mid chart, for example? Do we keep the obs chart? Or do we keep the observation chart inside the ward, just outside of it, or inside the little room, or just outside of it, or like in the file and stuff? And these tiny little nuanced things is where you really feel
just lost.
Yeah. Exactly. And I feel like that's the part where you start to feel deficient, and that's the part that you feel luggage in. You know, because realistically, the consultants and all the registrars and all the other doctors and stuff, especially the house officers, they want you to learn. They want to teach you and stuff.
And also, we don't like when we had fourth year students in our team, we never expect fourth years to know anything.
Exactly.
Like seriously, we just basic medical things, you know, like if you don't know just like what an ECG is, or if you don't know how to use your stethoscope, for example. But we don't expect you to be good at clinical skills. We don't expect you to know anything. If you can answer like just a question, it's just like, wow, well done, you know? So I definitely remember when I was in fourth year, I had very little knowledge. And as a house officer looking and trying to teach fourth years, you know, some of the stuff that I learned over the years, it's like strong calibration and how much you actually learn starting from your clinical years. Like most of your knowledge will really come from fourth year. Yeah. And so I continued on with that morning, and I introduced myself to the team. There's a few introductory meetings and stuff, and started on our ward round, like straight into it. And I thought that the medical half was a bit more chill and a bit more relaxed and stuff. But it might have just been that day there was quite a busy set of ward rounds to do. And ward rounds is, you can explain it. I mean, so ward rounds is when you round and you go round on all of your patients and you check how they've been doing, you see how they were overnight, were there any events. And during the ward round is when the consultant and the whole medical team, and sometimes other members of the team as well, you know, like for example, nurses, pharmacists, physiotherapists, whatever it is. Will join in and help create a plan. And that plan is the thing that is usually followed on and executed by the junior staff, aka house officers and registrars, for the remainder of that day. So it's like a really important part of the day where the patients get looked after. And then there's some key differences in medical ward rounds versus surgical ward rounds, which you haven't experienced yet, but surgical ward rounds are real quick, whereas medical ward rounds are just...
They take a bit more time. And
sometimes take a lot more time.
So are you able to go around and... So how does it work? Do you go just with them, like following them around? Or are you able to actually talk to patients one-on-one? Or do you always have someone supervising you? Like what was that?
So I didn't realize actually how customizable my day is. And a lot of the time, some of the doctors have literally said word for word, I don't care what you do. Like if you want help, I'm here and I can ask you questions and stuff. And they're super supportive and stuff, these guys that are saying this. But it's what we make of it at the end of the day as well. And you can go through a lot of time throughout your day where you literally do nothing at all if you have that mindset. But if you have an actual genuine interest to learn, there are resources everywhere for you to. And the biggest resource are the patients, actually. And having a conversation with them, trying to go through the whole process of diagnosis and stuff yourself, and then thinking about it, mulling over it, and then report back to your team or one of the house officers and stuff. A cool thing that I really found was the actual walking around with the ward rounds and with the team and everything. Like it's like your little like you feel like the A-Team, like the movie, the A-Team, and you're walking around and you're like, yeah, you got a problem, we're gonna fix it. But at most of the time, I was just like holding a folder, moving the trolley around. Grabbing another piece of paper that's somehow like slightly falling out of this person's hand. I'm like, oh, just got that in time. Like these are the ways that I started realizing how I'm actually useful in the morning ward rounds.
And it actually makes a difference. Like
it really does.
Helpful fourth years are like kind of just lubricate the gear, and it just seriously it just smoothens things out a little bit.
And I didn't realize that.
And luggage fourth years can really be like sand in the gears. It's just like we're still moving, but like, constantly.
I just got to deal with you. And I'll admit, like it definitely took, I think it took at least a week for me to learn and understand how things go. And there are particular individuals that I can thank, particular house officers that literally sat me down and said, hey, this is your first week. How are you feeling? Like, what's going on in your head right now? Do you know what's expected of you? What's important and stuff? Do you know how you can actually help around here? and make a difference. And like, no, like I didn't. I thought like, and I think this is still true. And as a fourth year, you're in there to learn, you're in there to experience what it's like for the true stuff, not just what the textbook says and stuff, or what the lecturer says and everything, but to really be immersed in the field. But like from topics of like medical students just being lazy and like, as soon as we're done with ward rounds, is there anything else for me to go? For me to do? Okay, no. Can I go home? Okay, sweet. Just go home. Like there are people with that sort of attitude and stuff as well. And I mean, of course, there are several other reasons as to why they might be not as interested or something like that. And it could vary as to having a good team or a shit team, a bad team. And I was very fortunate to have a really, really great team in my cardiology run. I'm at Auckland Hospital. And these guys were super supportive, and I think right now I haven't sort of structured my, I haven't reflected on it properly, and I might just be like interjecting tiny little stories and like tips here and there through it all, but like some things as to like how to ask questions and how to learn and through it and stuff. And I'm always walking around with my notebook and constantly writing stuff down, not to learn afterwards, but to like, well, I mean, to learn, but just to ask later on, because another thing you'll know, and this is a very like niche, like this specific example, but like doctors will really get pissed if you're asking questions at the wrong time, but they also get pissed if you're not making the use of the resource and not asking questions at all. Cool. And stuff like that. Like, I think the fantasy of it is still there, and like it hasn't worn off just yet. I'm hoping it doesn't, but I've definitely gotten a bit more of a realistic perspective of what it's like, and I really still like that. So
I've got a question.
Yeah.
So there's obviously been a lot of things that you've learned about the hospital system and how teams work and all of that sort of stuff, and how to be useless and how to be useful, and also how to be useful and useless. You know, like what the difference is. And I definitely remember that as well. I feel like you probably picked up on that much earlier than I did, because I feel like I was useless for a very long time.
Right.
But I think a lot of students who have yet to experience clinical, they might be interested in sort of what the, what are you kind of looking forward to? Like, what are you actually, what are the things in your day that are so different? Because obviously the entire experience is really different. What are the things about your experience that are actually so contrasting compared to like the way that you were in third year, in lectures? What's like the difference in sort of the value you're getting out of it, or the way that you're learning, or the highlights, or is it much the same?
Sorry, can I just clarify? So you're in fourth year now. Is your entire year going to be you in a hospital now?
Yeah. Fourth year, fifth year, sixth year, with like short periods of formal learning. We also just set up lectures and stuff on particular medical topics, or just how to talk to patients and stuff as well.
So it's a big change then.
Yeah. And we get gradually led up into it. At the end of third year, we do once a week sort of placements at a particular hospital. But from fourth year, fifth year, sixth year onwards, you're full-time at hospital, essentially. Yeah, and progressively increasing in responsibilities and tasks that you need to do. Yeah.
An interesting point is that when you start sort of fourth year, I think there's kind of a transition, and I feel like this happens with most people, is that when you're talking to friends or something, people will say like, "Oh, how was uni? How's uni like?"
Yeah.
But people will start saying, "How's work?"
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. I can't. Did I say that to you? Yeah.
No, but it happens. Yeah.
So you already feel like you're full-time working.
You kind of know that you're not working, but it doesn't feel right to say you went to uni.
Yeah.
So you just say
it's just
work.
So not uni.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Yeah. So like, what are the main things that you're finding value in at the moment? Like, what's the highlights?
It's really hard to pinpoint. I mean, specifically, and this is just going to be tailored to my personal experience as well. But definitely, I was going to say talking to patients, but actually talking to the doctors. Yeah, and this is an interesting one as well, because it's obviously going to be very subject to the type of, or the doctor you're speaking to, and especially the specialty that they might come from and stuff as well. But talking to the patients about the sort of case that they have and learning from them and everything, definitely. But then talking and like coming and thinking about it in your own head based on all the knowledge that you've had, which is like nothing compared to all the knowledge that they've got. And then just like coming up with your own sort of assessment and then just saying like, how did I go? Was I right or not? And you present your ideas and stuff and you sort of like go through it and they'll say, and then you just ask for what their perspective was on this patient, on this sort of topic.
That's quite rare, actually. I don't see a lot of fourth years actually doing that. Like synthesizing their own, like a lot of the time, the fourth years that I've had on my teams and have seen, like they don't seem to have much in the sense of like being quite proactive or I think there's a level of intimidation, but I also think that, you know how like when you go from high school to uni, you have so much more freedom and independence. It's sort of the same, like from third year to fourth year, you just have so much more independence. You could literally just do nothing and learn very little. Like, you know, you could like just not show up. You know, like people potentially would just not know. And so I think there's quite a lot of variation with fourth years and fifth years and even TI in terms of how proactive they are.
And if I could sum it down to 2 words, actually I was going to say one, and that first one would have just been, in order of priority, would have been being proactive as a fourth year student. Goes like such a long way, like you said. And the second thing would be more so generally leading up to all the way to like applying for your training program, which is the part after house officer leading into registrar. Am I right? Something like that.
There's an overlap.
It's once you're a doctor and stuff further on, and even further after that is your reputation and how that precedes you, I think. And how every tiny action or thing you say can put a label on you, because
it's definitely true.
I'm not sure to what extent this is true, but I can imagine, like, I'm sure the doctors speak amongst each other about like with students, like regarding students, like okay,
this is something that I feel. Okay, if there's any fourth years or fifth years, like listening to this, like the medical team, the doctors, we notice everything.
Oh god,
we'll always know if you're there or not there. Like we're always asking. We might not care.
It's so interesting,
but it's like, and like I want to say this in like the least offensive way possible, which is always a great way to start a statement.
I love you, but
it's kind of similar to if you have like a new pet, like because you're kind of like always following the team along, and you're always like, hey, what are they doing? How are they? Like you know, whenever we have a new student, it's quite common for like coffee time or whenever, like having lunch, to say like, how's a new student? Like, what are they up to? What are they doing? Or at the ward round, when we're starting the ward round, it's not like we're not going to start because the fourth year is not there. But if they're not there, we'll be like, hey, where's the fourth year? Like, we'll ask, where's this person? And then if they're late or whatever, we'll be like, okay, whatever. But we kind of are sort of making this constant rolling judgment on fourth years, and we're always sort of paying attention. And I think when you have a proactive student, I mean, personally, as well as a lot of, you know, my colleagues, feel really like we want to help. If there's someone that's proactive, we're like, yeah, we really want to get involved and help this person learn. And that will be reciprocated, not 100% of the time, but for most, especially the younger generation of doctors that's occurring that are pretty involved in education, definitely there's a culture of reciprocation. And I completely agree. I think it goes a really, really long way, you know, being proactive and having, you know, good ethic and things like that. And when there's a really, you know, dubious student or like dubious house officer or registrar entering into a new department or team, people will talk. The nurses talk, that everyone will know. They know the reputation of the person coming in. And then, you know, like it does make a difference.
And like I'm almost like surprised to hear that, because the moments that once I was told, like, you know what, like something that's expected of a good fourth year student is being proactive. And this is after my first week, during my first week, when I still sort of like figuring out what sort of person do I need to be around here. Not want to be, because I know exactly what I want. I want to be proactive. I want to be a good medical student. But how do I do it? Where do I need to be? Who needs me to be where? And how can I make the biggest impact while still learning and everything? And when I started thinking about the being proactive and stuff, and I started like actively thinking, okay, like having my eyes open, like before, like as I sort of sense that they're rounding up with this current patient, I walk out and go onto the laptop look up the new patient's detail, pull out the folder out, have it ready on the desk for them, get the med chart out and everything like that. So they literally just have to walk. Here is everything ready.
Yeah.
And like, I'm always like, okay, good. Like, yeah, everything's fine, Neil. You got everything? Yeah, sweet. Okay, good. Now, they will be pleased with this. And then I go to that stage, and then they just like take the folder, walk on and stuff. I'm like, not that I'm expecting
thankless.
Not that I'm expecting a thank you or anything like that and stuff. But like it's all, I almost felt like they don't notice it, but at the same time, I'm okay with that as well.
But the thing is, they definitely will notice.
Yeah, and I didn't realize.
Yeah. So when I was until I became a house officer and was working in the team with students, I always felt like no one cared about students. You were invisible.
Yeah.
You know, like, but it's very not the case.
Right.
I think, you know, something like that, expediting the flow of things. I think the way you put it, having your eyes open, is a really good way of thinking about it. And I think potentially people that haven't worked in a clinical setting don't really know what, you know, you would mean. Like, do you kind of understand when he says like keeping your eyes open?
See, I can imagine what you mean, but I feel like that's the thing. Like you said, you were preparing like in your notes, like learning about cardiology, and then you go in and there's all this like information that seems trivial but is so important from day-to-day life and running the hospital and how everyone works together. And so it's like I can imagine that, you know, there's files that are important, there are sheets that are important, but once you get there it's like what does that actually mean? Where is that?
Actually that's not really the kind of focus, and I think that's like a good kind of contrast, and that's sort of what you interpret that as. But actually the eyes open part is like just being very attentive to what is going on, because there's so much like you've got a team with 1 or 2 consultants and 1 or 2 registrars and 1 or 2 house officers and maybe a nurse as well, and you're seeing anywhere from, you know, as little as 10 to 50 patients during a ward round, and you can be spending anywhere from 1 hour with a patient, unlikely, but sometimes an hour with a patient, to like less than 10 seconds sometimes. And just the ability to like know what's going ahead. What patient are we seeing next? Why are we seeing them? What do we need to see this patient? They're talking about procedure. Maybe I need to get the equipment for the procedure. Like just being so attentive to what is going on right now, who needs what, and just like I said, lubricating and greasing the gears. That really does actually make a difference. And the house officers will definitely know, and the registrars will notice as well, and the consultants always talk within the team.
Right.
So,
and I think part of it is like, it's not only you knowing your role. I'm speaking for fourth years myself, like myself. It's not only knowing what your role is as a fourth year, but knowing what other members' roles are within the team itself.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if you can find areas where you can make their lives easier, that's actually part of what I'm meant to do as a fourth year student as well. If the patient's struggling to like hop out of bed because it's at an incline and they need to show their feet to show pitting edema, fluid in the legs, and they're because it's cold in the hospital and you realize that it's cold, and so their blanket's like tucked safely underneath their legs, and you just go in there and help them just before the doctor's about to come down to their legs in the examination. It's already there, it's ready for you. You know?
And that part must make it like, I mean, it's those tiny tasks that you're going to be doing that makes such a big difference to how much time they need to spend with the patient, and if they need to redirect their time somewhere else. So it would give back.
Because ideally you want to spend your time with the actual medical stuff that you spent like years and years learning, and you want to actually apply that rather than dealing with this like tiny inefficiencies. And
I think the balance is that you don't want to be spending your time doing menial things just operationally. You want to be spending your time learning. But the thing is, in a way, that level of just being very logistically helpful goes a long way in how much learning you will be able to unlock in terms of just setting up a path for you where people really want to help you, and they just see that you're really proactive, kind of engaged onto a person. So I think the balance is, because I know some students that are just really focused only on their learning. And sometimes I feel like they don't get as much learning because the staff aren't as willing to go out the extra mile to kind of help them learn. So, I mean, I think what your experience has been a really quite universal sort of challenges. But I think the way that you're handling it is probably better than most students, especially from the ones that I've observed sometimes.
Right.
With that being said, I have a quick question for you. What is something really unexpected that you found, and what was like a con? Have you had any cons in your physio? I'm sure you would have. Or something really unexpected.
In the whole, like throughout the past 4 weeks? I wouldn't say a con exactly. I'd prefer just something unexpected, actually. I think, again, probably just me personally, I'm super into my like self-help and like making sure I'm like mentally all good to make sure I can like do all my other tasks and stuff properly. And I pay a lot of importance to that as well.
Yeah.
And I started realizing how easy it was for me to just get stuck in like taking work home with me. I'm not at that stage yet, clearly, but constantly just thinking about the medical stuff and I need to study now. I need to read about thyrotoxicosis and stuff and make sure I'm proficient in that so I can go back to hospital the following day and do that. And I could just about predict that I'm about to go into this burnout cycle before, and I stopped myself just before I started entering it. And this is a thing that I wanted to talk about actually, is that I'm not sure if it's human nature or if it's something else entirely, but I feel like humans, or at least busy people, have a tendency to always look into the future, into what's next. How do I do this? How to prepare for this? Because, I mean, that's also ultimately the sort of life that we have right now, information overload, too many distractions here and there. And we sort of have to like filter our way through and think about all these things coming at us constantly, that we don't spend enough time being in the present and stuff. And now this stuff is going to sound a bit like meditation and mindfulness and everything like that, which is also super important. I'm not going to downplay those in any measure as well. But one super helpful thing that I think is like a tangible thing that I'd recommend to anyone really, and I understand it's much easier said than done, but so far I'm able to do it, is not take any work home after 6 p.m. And so a little bit unorthodox for a Met fourth year student, I do stay a little bit longer than the average one, and I stay till maybe like 5:30, 6 o'clock maybe on some days, even though I could have gone home at 1. And I totally could have. Sure, I mean, if you want me to be like completely honest, part of it's making a good impression that I'm like here to work and I'm here to learn, and so I'll stay a bit longer, especially because I enjoy it. I'm not going to do it for something I don't enjoy. But secondly, the main reason actually is because when I go home, I don't want to be thinking about anything medically related or anything about work. My home time is strictly to relax and strictly to hang with my mum and dad or my family, catch up with friends, enjoy my dinner, enjoy my time outside and stuff. And I mean, Justin can probably say that like in the future the capacity for that is going to decrease. But I think setting my environment and being very deliberate in this is the time that I'm working and this is the time that I'm relaxing will allow me to not burn out in the future, or at least enjoy the time that I currently have in whatever activity that I'm doing right now. And so I don't mind staying a little bit longer and being a bit more tired at the end of the day, just because I'm going to value a lot more
when you get
like
to go
sitting
home
like eating
chill.
my like melon popsicle on the couch watching Netflix or something, just relaxing, or like reading a book in the sun or something. It's just like
or recording a podcast.
And that stuff goes a long way.
Awesome. Well, we're again running low on time, but I mean, super interesting. And I'm excited to see how your experience is actually going to change, especially as you move into different departments as well. So thanks for listening, and we'll move on to the next story next time.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to Subcut. If you guys have any suggestions for content, please make sure you send it through.
You can get in touch and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, or find us on our website at jttmed.com/subcut.
Subcut is a podcast brought to you by JTT. If you or anyone you know is interested in a career in medicine, make sure to get in touch and check us out at jttmed.com.